Boker Tov, everybody. Hope you're all doing well and hope that you had a lovely Thanksgiving holiday and weekend with family and friends. I was thinking this week I wanted to share with you from Parshat Vayetze, which is our portion of the week. We're in the middle of the narrative with Jacob and Esav. Some of you may know the story. Jacob and Esav are twins, and there's some sibling rivalry there, and Jacob steals Esav's blessing and convinces Esav to give him his birthright of being the firstborn. And so Esav is feeling pretty angry at his brother. And at the end of last week's Parsha, it says that he harbored a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing that his father gave him. And Esav said, well, I'm going to wait, but when my father dies, I'm going to kill my brother. I can't stand him. And Rebecca hears this and lets Jacob know, and tells Jacob to run. So Jacob is on the run, and he leaves Beersheba, and he sets out for Haran. And the Torah, this is where our Parsha opens this week, and the Torah says, that he sort of reached a certain place, and he went to sleep. And he took a stone, he put it under his head, and this is where we have the famous scene of the dream, of the angels going up and down and up and down, and Jacob having this dream that God is standing beside him, right? And God says, I'm the Lord your God, and God introduces God's self, so to speak, personally to Jacob, and Jacob wakes up and says, Veikatz Yaakov mishnato, he wakes up from his sleep, Vayomer achein yesh Adonai bamakom hazeh vanochi lo yadati. Surely God was in this place, and I did not know. Great book written about this whole verse from Rabbi Lawrence Kushner years ago. And it's a really important verse because the verse is talking to us about what it means to be awake. Rashi comments very simply on this verse. Had I known, said, I would not have slept in such a holy place, right? Rashi's pointing out sort of the obvious, but Jacob wakes up and says, gee, I didn't know that God could be here, right? I picked a random place. Why is God here more than anywhere else? Had I known, I wouldn't have been asleep. Of course, the challenge is, for all of us, we're often asleep. At least we're not awake. Because achein yesh Adonai b'makom hazeh v'anachnu lo yadanu. God is surely in this place, but we don't really know that because we're not really paying attention. The notion is that God's presence can be found anywhere. Now, what do we do about bad things happening to good people and evil in the world? And all of these are real questions that I don't have any better answers than many other people. I struggle with this also. But the text isn't talking about God controlling everything. The text is talking about God being present in all sorts of moments, places, if you will, but only if we're awake and paying attention. There's an interesting note I saw in this book this morning where Rabbi Kushner says, the beginning of knowing about God is simply paying attention, being fully present where you are. Or as Rashi says, waking up. We realize, like Jacob, we are asleep. We don't see what's happening around us. For most of the time, the lights are on, nobody's home. And then he has an interesting analogy. He says, right now, for example, I'm reading this book. I'm consuming the words and the ideas. But what if I was a typographer? Or I would notice the shapes and letters. And what if I was a poet? What if I was a paper manufacturer? I might look at this book totally differently. A blind person, a composer, we find what we seek, and we seek who we are. We're not always fully paying attention to what's going on, because living on that plane is impossible. The religious question of the Parsha is, do we notice? Do we open our eyes carefully to the miracles and blessings and awesomeness of God's presence that is all around? Sometimes we can't help but notice. I was driving yesterday and I saw an incredible maple tree, beautiful red leaves. I'm sure you've seen them driving around. Red and yellow, what's left of the leaves on the trees. Gorgeous when the sun hits them. Oh, and it makes you notice what an incredible world that we live in. That's the easy noticing. The question is, do we notice on a regular basis? Do we notice when we just kind of are in a random place like Jacob was? Or are we asleep and not really paying attention? So that's the spiritual challenge of the week. To try and be more awake. To try and notice the miracles that are all around. The everyday miracles, the miracles of our very existence, the seemingly random things that may be random or may not be random that happen on any given day. Are we paying attention? The first task of a person who seeks to grow spiritually and religiously is to learn to pay closer attention. May we be blessed to look closely, listen carefully, open our hearts and our eyes so that we can wake up and say also, Achen yesh Adonai b'makom hazeh, v'anochi lo yadati. Surely God is in this place, and I just wasn't paying attention. And with that challenge, I wish you a wonderful week ahead.